Hello everyone, my name is Uthris, and welcome back to another episode of Alpine Odyssey. We are continuing with the Greco-Roman section today, and you'll notice that this area changed a little bit, and we are gray boxing out a structure. This is probably the fourth attempt of making this thing. I wasn't quite sure about the overall layout, and what we're generally making here is kind of the transitional area from the Aztec into the Roman theme. And I believe during one of our live streams, people said that it would be cool to do like a little bit of a Roman villa farmland area, and we had like two little huts laid out and potential farmlands plots. But kind of upon review, I didn't think it made sense from a theme park kind of standpoint. It looked nice. However, the way the European theme is laid out, the way the Aztec theme is laid out, this whole area was just too open. It was like going from New York straight into an Ohio cornfield in a single step. It just didn't make sense. It didn't transition very well, and so after a while, I decided to make just a single Roman villa and make it more of a compound style. This is going to be a kind of large restaurant in the long term. We're probably going to do the interior detailing on a live stream on the upcoming weeks and try and get that sorted out. But we're just trying themes at this point. You know, this Roman theme is kind of still a work in progress. There's not a lot of things governing the consistency of it, unlike say how the Aztec theme turned out, and the same thing with the European theme. We don't have a tile set yet, and I haven't built a tile set yet because I kind of wanted every one of these buildings to be kind of unique to themselves. So that just kind of makes the whole process a little bit longer. You can see, even though I gray box this in, I am just hand placing almost every single item. It is slower, granted, but sometimes to kind of discover what you are creating, you have to kind of go through this process. Not to say we won't use copy and paste and rotation to speed up kind of square objects like this archway into the kind of like plaza space. These compounds are kind of interesting to me. I don't know a whole lot about their individual parts. I know, it's probably going to be a living area, probably going to be some sort of bathing area in here, maybe some storage, maybe a guest area or something. But based on kind of the images that I saw off of Google, I'm kind of determining that these large compounds not only are efficient in terms of space, but are nice because it keeps kind of the family unit together. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing about history that might be lost to almost time, at least here in America, is that everyone is so independent and so, against living together as a family after so many years, and it's kind of interesting that that wasn't always the case, and you kind of forget about that as you kind of go about your day to day. So anyways, this is like just a little arch, very kind of similar to a triumphal arch, same kind of building style, making a archway like this and a little motif along the top trim area, but obviously, just there for function and a gateway portal. Another thing about these older buildings and compounds, especially say in the Renaissance, which is probably my main reference point personally, because I'm a little bit more familiar with that time period than anything else, is that a lot of compound buildings or buildings where the whole family is living together, and maybe it might be a valuable house or something like that, the whole first floor is almost considered to be a defensive unit. Not very many windows, or if there are windows, they're very small, so people can't just climb through them. And then most people live on the second floor. In this case, it's going to be a lot of little buildings connected through and surrounded by a pretty thick wall / walkway covered area, and that's going to provide your security. So the only way to really get into this kind of household is through this large main gate, and then that's it. and that's a pretty defensible gateway, I would say. Pretty narrow, tall enough, and definitely could do the job. Now, the color scheme, I'm going to try and keep this a little bit of a lighter building, a little bit more close to the base plaster coloring. We will have some darker trim elements. The bottom, we're going to get a little bit more of a sandstone color to kind of tie into, say, the Triumphal Arch and a little bit into the Colosseum, because they do have that color tone to them. And other than that, the tiling of the roof, I know Italian roofs generally use the long kind of half circular terracotta tiling. However, I don't really have that piece besides the actual default roofing in Planet Coaster. So we're going to have to do custom roofing. And unlike, say, the European roof, which kind of uses the same tiling technique, we're not offsetting these. They're just going to be solid columns going down. And the way they overlay them, of course, is one arch is sitting over top of a more U shape, and you just set them on top of each other. So that's why some of them are raised up, some of them are sunk down, and you get these nice vertical columns in the roof line. And it's a little bit of a different pattern and something that we haven't really done yet in Alpine Odyssey, so I like that. We're also doing some pretty thick columns on all the corners, and still just filling everything out. A lot of this episode is a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of trying to find a piece that fits, and then being like, no, that doesn't work, and then trying again. You'll notice that the out exterior, right, since we don't have a lot of those window elements on the outside of the building, it kind of makes the whole thing a little plain. And so I have to try and make, say, like the roof line maybe a little bit more interesting than normal. Add some molding elements, some structural support elements along there. Kind of makes things look a little temple-esque. I'm not sure how accurate that is. I'm sure you guys in the comments will let me know how accurate that is, but that's what I enjoy. And I enjoy the dialogue of well, they really built the structures like this. Uthris, you're kind of being a little stereotypical, and that's a perfectly fine critique. I am definitely not claiming I know a whole lot about architecture, to be honest. I do enjoy architecture, but I'm not the end-all, be-all kind of source for architecture, and that's fine. And just kind of build what I can see off of Google Images the best to my ability and make it fit the art style and game world of Planet Coaster, because the believability aspect is to me always kind of the most important thing. And if it looks like it can exist in Planet Coaster, then in my opinion, I'm kind of doing my job as best as possible. A lot of different roof lines kind of converging in this structure, and that's another thing that takes a while because I didn't make a tile set, and some of the roof pitches are pretty unique in sections, and we have to kind of hand build a lot of it. This side building here might be a bar eventually or something. It's a little cluttery on the inside, but we can always kind of clean that up. It's going to have just a single slope roof, and they do this from time to time. I did see a couple villas with without the full pitched roof. It's just one of these almost like lean-to style. I don't know the terminology for just a solid kind of angle, say like 30-degree angle roof, and that's it. So maybe you guys can let me know that down below. Originally it was pitched, in my opinion, a little bit too high, so we're just going to adjust that by copying it over, and then moving this whole angle as one unit and restoring it to the roof line. I just didn't want it to be taller than the building next to it, just because the building itself isn't as big as the structure next to it. So it didn't really make sense visually to have such a small structure be taller and things like that. The archway, I left it red, so we're going to go in and color it. Sometimes, of course, it gets a little difficult to select the piece you want, and then you have to try and match the color best you can. And I'm really liking these kind of cleaner, wider elements with these beige kind of tan elements. It's just a nice neutral look. I think the reason I like it so much personally is probably because my home growing up was kind of this color palette to begin with, and it's just kind of makes me think of home anyways. Now this is a larger structure to the left here. It's going to have a little bit more of a fancier roof trim. It's going to have maybe some thicker crown molding up there. Maybe this is the main house. Maybe this is the bathhouse. I have no idea. I think we'll be figuring that out when we are actually making the restaurant and courtyard kind of interior space speak for itself and kind of stand on its own. The roof doesn't overhang the molding, which I visually wanted that line to be there and cast a little bit more of a shadow, kind of pop off of the facade. Stacking layers I think is super important, even though this is, in my opinion, and looks like a very clean structure, something with not a whole lot of crazy details to it, no like massive motifs, but the detail that you do put in has to be kind of planned out and thought out to keep that clean look, but also to give it just enough of a pop to keep it interesting, if nothing else. So here's what I mean with some of the windows, right? So these windows are all on the upper floors rather than the lower floors, because again, the lower floors are kind of reserved for the defensible areas. And then once you get into the courtyard itself, we can start introducing some larger windows on the lower sections and keep them a little bit interesting. This is going to be like a big wooden door with its own little roof sticking out, and we're going to use the back side of a window for this because it's kind of one of the smallest stone pieces that you can use. And if I use maybe the wooden tiling that we have been, the bottom of that might be poking through and might be a little messy. So using windows, of course, for a lot of the detail seems to work out really well for these type of things. The way you get the corners, you kind of have to use the side of the window, overlay it. As long as you're not looking too hard, you can't notice the vertical lines too much, but they are there. But that's just a limitation of size. We'll get some round columns on there. Corinthian, I think, is those types. I could be wrong. I think they're Corinthian columns, is the round ones with the fancy fluting at the top. Some archways, so you can see now that the walls are going to be actually enterable. I'm probably going to put pathing in them. We can put bathrooms in these little side corridors, keep them interesting, and keep your guests kind of interacting with the building as much as possible. And I think that's something Alpine Odyssey succeeds at very well, is to create a good sense of usability in all of our buildings. A lot of our buildings could have just been facades. In fact, we would have been a lot farther in Alpine Odyssey most likely if I didn't do the interior of most of these buildings and just stuck us like a storefront kind of in them. But to me, it's just super important to get your people into the structure and actually disappear from sight and reemerge out of the structure. It's just far, I guess, more believable going back to that factor than, say, just doing a basic storefront. Not that, it would look bad with basic storefronts. Far from it, I believe, but it's just a detail that I want to capture personally. Here, making sure we get a little bit of a pathway lead kind of through here. We're going to have kind of a roundabout in the middle there, and hopefully we'll put a fountain in there at some point this episode. Just something basic, I would say. Nothing too fancy. And now we get to watch me struggle with pathing for a little bit. Planet Coaster, boy, pathing, it's still a thing that we all have to contend with in this game that we would have thought we would have won the war by now, but it seems like the pathing tool is always one step ahead of us in annoyance. Really, we're just limited by the two staircases. So the exit point of the Aztec temple is lower than the plane that all this sits on. So it has to raise up. And then the staircase down into like the main Roman area is a little bit higher than this plane as well. So you have to kind of go up, down, up really quick, and that kind of limits the flexibility of the pathing a little bit. It does help to kind of create a center line with some of the pathing tools. I just never really got this, I don't think, to look exactly how I wanted it until about there. And then smooth concrete is the main pathing, and then we're using this almost like terracotta for like sidewalks or little areas. It's kind of similar how we use the red brick in the European section. It's just a good way to have a two-tone. I think the Aztec area is kind of missing that element a little bit, and kind of makes the area feel very squished because all the pathing is kind of the same. So maybe that's something to address in the future, but again, for now, I'm not going to touch the Alpine or the Aztec area for a long while. Now the corners, very similar to how we would do, say, the Asian style of construction, how we have to kind of stitch the corners together, use some brickwork on top to kind of seal up the gaps and create the seams to cover up some of the ugly bits. And it works out pretty well for the most part. I just really like that we were able to capture a lot of this red roofing, make it really pop out, and just look overall pretty good. So at this point, we're kind of starting on the main structure. Now, in my opinion, this is probably a little bit more Asian than Roman. I could be wrong, but I wanted it to kind of taper off on the second floor and have a roof line going around the whole body. Now, I know that's a common thing to do in Asian structures. However, I just wanted to do it here too. I don't know how accurate it is. Again, I didn't really see this off a reference picture. I just thought it would be cool. So if it bugs people, we can always change it, get rid of the whole roof going around like a skirt, and just change that to be a solid square building, maybe add a balcony, just so it's a little bit more visually interesting. I think that's kind of the main reason I do this kind of stuff, is that I don't like just building a box. To me, it needs to be a box with another box hanging off of it, or an L shape with a box hanging off of it, or a T shape with a box hanging off of it. And that's kind of how you build depth in a lot of these structures. But just a straight up solid wall for 2 stories, I just can't build a structure like that. It's really hard for me. Even the Roman Forum that we kind of started on stream is really hard, because it's in the giant order of construction, which basically means everything is considered to be like 2 to 3 stories tall. Like the pillars are 2 to 3 stories tall, the facade is 2 to 3 stories tall, and that's why it's called giant order. You get this giant representation of things rather than, say, a single story of details and then a single story on top of that. So that's kind of interesting. More little molding here. We're gonna have a little fancier entryway on the main kind of house structure. We're gonna try and copy some of the windows over. Again, upper floors. I could make these all probably bigger windows, but I kind of like these small windows, upper floor, big windows, lower floor, at least on the inside, and keeping that look to it. Going to try and copy the door from the left structure over to the kind of sloped roof structure there. And then we get a little bit of a basic fountain, nothing too fancy, something small, just using some of the pillar elements from these smaller bits and bobs, and then a little bit of an actual spout that will get water flowing. And then we're gonna worry about all the trees and shrubs surrounding this section. We're not gonna fully detail out the trees and shrubs. I wanna leave a little bit for your guys' feedback, so you can let me know how dense to put this area, and I think we'll probably cover that on the stream this weekend. But I just want to put a little bit here just so it feels a little bit more grounded, surrounded by elements. Some more, maybe some hedge work to go through here to make it look really clean and well kept, because the interior would be, I would assume, it's kind of like the greeting meeting area of the family and friends. I'm sure you could host a pretty good party in that courtyard over there for sure. Color the grass a little bit, just so it's not this whole solid color. We might try and get seating in here for the restaurant, so there's outdoor seating. We could maybe put the seating in the hallways connecting the buildings. Who knows? It's going to be a little bit of an endeavor. And then we're going to build this left field. This is going to be like a vineyard, and it's going to have a low kind of wall here with just like a terracotta roofing to protect the surface of the wall long term. Again, maybe a little Asian in style over Roman. I could be wrong, but yeah, it just kind of feels a little bit more Asian than maybe I thought it would be. But I guess they build compound buildings kind of like this too. It's just weird to do that. This kind of vineyard does kind of move and do a little bit of an awkward shape. So these are kind of done with separate buildings, if you guys are wondering how that is done. Anyways, I think that's a long enough speed build. This is a long one, and I cut out plenty to try and keep this somewhat interesting for you guys. We're gonna go ahead into real time, take a look at it. You guys, of course, will give me your wonderful feedback as always, and we will continue Alpine Odyssey in just a second. Okay, so welcome back to the real-time section of the video. We have the nice Roman villa, I would say, filled in up here. There is a lot of things kind of missing from this structure. One, I don't know what to use it for. I know I wanted a restaurant, maybe a bathroom in here. Could be maybe even a gift shop could fit in here. This is a large compound. It can fit a large amount of items. I'm sure there could be details as well, like vines going up the walls, things like that. But I didn't want to go too crazy with it. I wanted to kind of get your guys' opinion, because this is kind of the Roman theme set that I'm going for. So this theme set will be used a lot down here in these buildings, a lot down here to kind of seal off the street, and hopefully you guys like it. And this is kind of the test piece for that. Kind of denser greenery at the edge of the Aztec area, just to kind of block off the site a little bit more. We have a good archway, fountain right in the middle, and then the doors offset to the side, a little asymmetrical. That's totally fine. Maybe a little bit of a crest up there. That is totally probably a little bit more medieval than Roman. And it just looks really nice. Now, I doubt they would want to live right next to an Aztec temple, so that is a little odd. It's a little jarring to see that kind of looming over you, but it's pretty good. Definitely nice kind of green space. We could try and build some tents over here, maybe for guests to sit under. They could sit in these little areas as well. This is probably going to be like the main restaurant area. We could think about maybe a winery or something, because attached to this whole compound is a little vineyard, and it has some trees to it. I'm trying to build up a little bit of foliage at the edge so people aren't looking at a parking lot the whole time, but I would say when you're in this section, you can't really see over the wall too much anyway, so you kind of forget that stuff is down there. All this is made, of course, with just tops of trees, some ropes, and there is the occasional wooden spike to keep these all lined up. And there is a proper path out here. I could put some viewing points to get guests come out here as well. It's kind of the first pass of detail, I would say, on that section. And so that covers a huge section of the Roman area, right? It's a little bit more open, for sure, than, say, the Aztec section, right? Because we have a lot of buildings in, like, these areas. Really only one building and open area. So very, very different. I am thinking about building another playground right across from this, just to fill in this transitional area. It might be Greco-Roman themed. It might be Aztec themed. Not quite sure on that just yet, but I think we're due for another playground area. It's kind of a good transitional element and a gap filler that we can do for this, because otherwise I don't know what to do on this little peninsula sticking out. And yeah, that's that is basically it. Look at that parking lot in the background. So proud. I will say, if you guys missed the last stream that we did finish a new statue. We made a Poseidon statue here. He's got a nice flowing mane and beard and hair in his trident. Definitely a little bit more of a dynamic pose than the Athena one. And I'm pretty happy with the way that thing turned out. It took a long time. It was 2 hours of sculpting on that one, or more. Anyways, that's it for Alpine Odyssey. If you guys are enjoying the stuff, as always, definitely subscribe for more creative goodness such as this. Go ahead and leave a like, leave a comment, and I will see you guys in the next episode.